One guy who will never be on the unemployment line is former broadcaster of the year and current nominee for repeat broadcaster of the year, of course, ESPN Radio Jersey Shore brethren, Mike Gill, joining us here on the Football Playbook 97.3. And Mike is Football Friday a regular almost, it seems like here. We've been chopping it up, breaking it down. And Mike's still getting to know the Football Playbook and myself. But what he doesn't know is we like to do a lot of scouting over at the NFL Draft Bible. We scout prospects, we scout broadcasters, and I'm doing my homework on the one Mike Gill. And it says here, speaking of brand managers, it says Mike Gill is the brand manager over at 97.3 ESPN Radio. I know what that means. I had one of those jobs once, Mike. It means you're the director of sales, the director of marketing, the sponsorship guy, the radio host guy, the co-host guy. You're holding down over there.
I do no sales, man. You don't want me walking in making sales. I don't do any sales. But, hey, listen, I'll tell you what, it's a good time to be in the Eagles business. But there's a lot of panic out there. You feeling the panic?
I'm not feeling the panic, but I know that there's a lot of shenanigans happening. And let me ask you about that, because some people think it's like a gamesmanship thing where Sirianni is like playing this game, keeping them guessing. And, 2 weeks ago, it was like, hey, Jalen just heals faster than everybody else. He's superhuman. Now, 2 weeks later, all of a sudden, he's in a lot of pain. We don't know if he's going to be able to go. We got all the design plays out of the playbook. Like, is he playing possum here? Is that a real thing? Or is this legitimate? Like, Jalen Hurts is really injured and we don't know what the playbook's going to look like in another week.
It's a good question, because Jalen yesterday himself said, we all know something's up here. It's just, what's the extent of it? Is he along for the ride here? Are they all, Sirianni's been doing this all year. He likes this gamesmanship. He wants to kind of keep his cards close to the vest. The game that we saw last Sunday suggested that they didn't think Jalen Hurts was 100%. Now, was that by design? This is an NFL game that you needed to win. To assume they went into that game playing less than, with the full deck of cards, that's taking a risk to try to win a game without giving your best effort. So I think that clouds where Jalen Hurts is in our minds right now. That being said, I think he's going to be, from 2 weeks from now, unless this is an injury that has been so kept under the rug here that no one knows what it is, I would think in 2 weeks that he would be much better off than he was when we saw him against the Giants last Sunday. What does that mean? I don't know. What does that mean in terms of how much more he can do? I don't know. But he obviously, they probably told him, we are not going to call runs and have you run the ball. Just get the ball out, get it to the playmakers, and let's not make any mistakes.
Yeah, it's interesting. That game on Sunday, I saw they passed the ball 35 times, but 25 of those 35 passes, Mike, were 10 yards or less. A lot of them were just dinks and dunks and, lateral passes, bubble screens. I mean, to me,
he had a couple long ones.
But did you notice the ball velocity was off on those?
Yes. Well, when the Giants sent pressure, he hit A.J. Brown for that 37-yarder. He hit Brown again for a 30-plus yarder. I thought they had a nice play when the Giants sent pressure from the left side, and he just kind of tight end screened it over the top. See, this is the problem with all the people who want the blitz, 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 blitz. The Giants blitz, 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 and the Eagles found the holes and had big plays. Look, the Giants played with kind of a half a deck. If they don't give up those big plays, what's the score of that game? We had Malcolm Jenkins on our show, and he basically told us, listen, any coordinator who's worth their weight, who has any salt in the game, they don't want to blitz. Coordinators have to call blitzes because they don't have the talent to defend. So it's like a gimmick. It's like Navy offense. They got to run a triple option because they don't have enough talent. The Giants blitz a lot because they just don't have the talent. And the Eagles, quite frankly, those couple big plays cost the Giants in that game.
Yeah, and so, we'll get into what a potential round 3 against the G-Men could look like, but we're talking to Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN Radio, about the Eagles. What is your take on some of these other injuries? It sounds like Sweat is going to be pretty good to go. Lane Johnson obviously is a big one, and it's hard to fathom. Like, the Eagles are the favorite. Well, some odds makers have the 49ers favored now in the NFC, but the Eagles are one of the main favorites, and to have arguably your number one and number two best player pretty banged up,
Yeah.
it's going to be a daunting task. But what do you make of this Lane Johnson? We know he's going to need surgery, Mike. We just don't know what extent of pain level or tolerance. We know he's got a high tolerance. We just don't know the level of pain.
That's the big thing is, we've seen Lane Johnson in the past try to play in games and with that ankle problem that he had a couple of years ago, and he would try and try. Now, those teams, remember, that was the year the team won 4 games. So were they just saying, listen, this team is not in it, man. Well, we know you're trying. Let's just shut you down. This is a game for a playoff situation. How much of a tolerance do they have? I know this. He came out of the Giant game the first time they played, the 48-22 game, and he said after that game that he could have played if they needed him to play. So is it a pain tolerance that he is already understanding of what it's going to be? I can't imagine that the doctors and Lane and the team would put him out there if he was at risk of really, really hurt. All these guys, right? Especially with what's going on in the NFL with some of these injuries right now. I mean, Josh Sweat, we just saw get carted off on the field. He was back on the practice field yesterday. You got to imagine that after the scene we saw in Buffalo, the fact that he gets carted off the same day, earlier in the day, that he's back on the practice field, they have to be at a high level of, hey, we got to make sure these guys are 100% ready to play and that there's no possibility of further injury. So that's where I'm kind of at with Lane Johnson. If he says he's ready to go and the team is allowing him to play, I expect Lane Johnson to give his best. Now, how long can he go? That remains to be seen. The question for me is, Rick, what do they do if he gets hurt? Do they go back to Driscoll, or do they then say, all right, let's make this move and put Dillard at left tackle and Mailata at right tackle and get our 5 best guys on the field?
Yeah, see, and a lot of people have been bringing that up, but wouldn't they have dabbled with that against the Giants rather than just trying to remix it in there on the fly? I mean, it seems like that if they were going to experiment or test that out, they would have at least tried it out. But, that was part of the problem of not putting the Giants away early, is they didn't have a chance to kind of experiment. But to me, if you're going to make 2 different position changes on your offensive line, you don't want to just kind of trot that out there in a playoff game. I would have thought we would have saw that against the G-Men.
Well, and I think a lot of this is because Lane Johnson was due to come back. I think if Lane Johnson was just done for the year, they probably make the big switch. All right, he's done. He's not coming back. Let's make that move. But because he is coming back, you don't want to make that move and then have to make it again and then shift again. That's why I think they just said, you know what? Stoutland over the years, since he's been here, and he goes back to the Chip Kelly era, Rick, when injuries have occurred on the Eagles offensive line, the mantra has always been, we don't want to make multiple changes. If one guy gets hurt, we don't want to have to change 2 positions to fix one. They've always gone the safe route and just put one guy in if one guy goes out, as opposed to saying, let's move him from here, replace that guy with this guy, and now you've got 2 changes on your offensive line. Because as we all know, you talk to any offensive lineman, through the years, and they'll tell you communication is such an underrated part of the success of an offensive line. And when you know that guy playing next to you and you know what he's going to do and you guys have good communication, that only exemplifies why this Eagles offensive line is so good.
Yeah, you must have been reading the mind waves here, because I was going to go right into Jason Kelsey, who met with the media, and he talked about fundamentals, but I have starred in my notes, Mike, communication. Because to me, the cadence, and Kelsey mentioned, like, hey, we're not happy with the way we've played the last couple of weeks, quite frankly. And to me, it's like, I don't know if enough has been made about the false starts, the penalties. I think a lot of that, part of it is cadence, part of it is communication. Are you worried? Do you think that was more of a Gardner Minshew thing? Are you worried about that at all? I know they spent this week getting back to the basics, practicing the fundamentals, doing more positional drills as opposed to install and game planning. What do you make of all that?
Yeah, I think your point about Minshew is a good one. Was his cadence a little different? Was that part of the reason? Because for those 2 weeks, they were pretty sloppy there, where you saw a lot of pre-snap penalties and a lot of stuff that just didn't look crisp and right, specifically that second game, too. I mean, he was really seemed like he was, we saw it once with Jalen. What game was that? I guess Washington, where they were just out of sync, out of sorts. So is it a big factor moving forward? Look, for me, and I'm kind of an outlier here, every game it's his own game. You could play a clean slate of football for 15 weeks, and then that 16th week, you're like, what's going on here? And there's no describing why it happened. It just happened. Is that who the Eagles have been all season long? No, they have not been a team that turned the ball over all that much. Well, late in the year, in their losses, they started to turn the ball over. Is that a product of not having Hurts not being 100%, the team being different when he's out, all that stuff? But early in the year, they weren't having those pre-snap problems. So what happened as this season went on? Zeke Elliott said something yesterday that's kind of interesting, and he mentioned maybe the team was just kind of waiting to get to the playoffs. In the NBA and in other sports, we just assume that the regular seasons are so long and they're just waiting for the playoffs. But we never make that assumption with football because of the short nature of the 17, 18 weeks now. We just imagine every game means something. Well, for Dallas and Philadelphia, a lot of these games towards the end didn't mean as much. Maybe they were just kind of going, I don't want to say going through the motions, but not focused as much as we will see these teams focused this weekend.
Yeah, playoff football is a different nature of the beast. Mike Gill is a different nature of the beast when he joins us here on the Football Playbook. Of course, 97.3 ESPN Radio, holding it down here. And we'll get into some predictions, Mike. Let me ask you about the defense, though. We talked about Jason Kelsey's frustrations. I've been personally frustrated watching this Darius Slay. And I'm sure you've got a lot of feedback this week on your show. Where is Mike Gill on the Darius Slay thermometer? Is it just a byproduct of he was playing at such a high level in the first half of the season that nobody can maintain that throughout the course of the year? Is it a byproduct of, scheming and moving parts in the back end? You got a lot of rotating pieces with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson going out, Josiah Scott, Kayvon Willis, Reed Blankenship. That communication that you alluded to maybe could be the result of some of these big plays that Slay is giving up, or is it just, hey, like you said, it's a long season, big plays happen, you can't expect them to be flawless? Or is it getting long in the tooth, Mike? Or is it a combination D, all of the above?
I think it's a combination of a lot, but one of the things I think that got downplayed a lot in the Eagles defense the last couple of weeks is Maddox and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Now, Johnson was back last week, but those 6 weeks that he was out coincided with a couple weeks that Maddox was out. And I think that's when we saw some breakdowns, because we talk about on the offensive line communication, the defensive secondary breakdowns in communication cause big plays and cause problems. You watch Minnesota play this weekend, you'll see a team, they play the Eagles defense. They play that Vic Fangio style of defense. Their problem is they have communication breakdowns in their secondary all the time. And I think the Eagles, having your safety and your slot corner out, the communication between those guys not being there, I think you saw a team like Dallas really take advantage of the middle of the field, where they said, all right, no Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, no Maddox. Let's attack the linebackers and put them into coverage, because Blankenship is not as good in coverage. Josiah Scott's not as good in coverage, although, he gave his best ever. With Blankenship, I've said, Blankenship's not losing you games. He's not doing anything to kill you, but he's also not helping you win games. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson helped cause turnovers. That helps you win games. You take a player like that off the field. Maddox helps you win games. And I think that just kind of boils over to Slay having more on his plate now, because the safety's not there helping him out. The communication between him and Blankenship isn't the same. And now you're seeing a team that's lost a couple parts. And here you go. Now you have questions. You lose parts, you get questions. Anytime a part leaves, you got to go to the mechanic and say, hey, my car's making a noise. What's the question? Fix it for me. $6,000 later.
Well, yes, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I think he's still tied for the interception lead in the NFL, so that's unbelievable. Now,
that's
Robert,
him. Your boy John McMullen had a great joke the other day. What do Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Dak Prescott have in common?
They both lead the league in interceptions and missing
5 weeks.
I think I saw that.
That's a good one, man. That's a good one.
But, to me, like Dak Prescott, though, as bad of a season that he's had, and we'll get into this a little bit more at the end of the segment, but, I mean, that Dallas team is talented. They could flip the switch at any given moment. But let me ask you one more Eagles question with Robert Quinn. You mentioned you lose a part, you got to find a part, a replacement part. But now we know Josh Sweat most likely is going to be back. Hassan Reddick is playing at an all-time high as far as I'm concerned. Brandon Graham obviously has been splendid on the edge. That sack pack, I mean, they've had some good chemistry going, minus Robert Quinn. Now, Quinn flashed a little bit on film last week. He can participate, but are you to the belief that, you know, these edge rushers are in such a groove? Why mess with the mojo? Or do you feel like, hey, here's a guy who had 20 sacks a year ago, let's throw him into the mix?
Well, I think that's what makes the Eagles defense so daunting, is that they just keep coming at you. That's the whole plan of this defense is the rush with 4, 7 in the back end, put confusing looks to the quarterback that they're going to have to find a guy open between 7 defenders, and that the pass rush will get home because the pass rush is always healthy. Robert Quinn, when they make this trade, it's a 4th-round pick, and you're thinking, wow, look, there's an argument to be made, Rick, that Robert Quinn is the most accomplished pass rusher on the Eagles. He's 7th among active sack leaders in the league with 102. That's more sacks than anyone on the Eagles has. So when they got him, you're thinking, this guy, 32 years old, he's younger than Brandon Graham. He is the most accomplished sack artist that this team has, and it's been a total disappointment. So do they get something from him? Something, anything. This guy had 18 and a half sacks a year ago. What happened that he just absolutely gave you nothing? Well, did it get fixed? Did that part get fixed? I don't know, but I would imagine 15 or so snaps from him, and they're going to see what he got. You remember who had a big game in the playoff game last year for the Eagles? Who gave them nothing all year?
Hit me.
Ryan Kerrigan. When it came to the playoffs, he had 2 sacks in that game last year. Does Robert Quinn give them something? I'm not betting on it, but I think what it does is it gives Josh Sweat a little extra couple snaps, because without him, you're playing Patrick Johnson, that level of player who's just a tremendous drop-off.
No, good point. I agree with your logic. You sold me on it. Well, I'm buying what Mike Gill is selling. Let's see, you know, how many people in the chat here are going to buy your picks. Seattle at San Francisco, I think we can all agree it'd be a major upset if the Seahawks.
I got a thought on that, though. I agree. But
the rain, the wind.
No, go through the San Francisco schedule. And what do we hear about the Eagles all year long? Well, they didn't beat anybody. San Francisco's best win this year was against Miami. That's their best win of the season. Not great. Yeah. Their schedule, not great. A lot of Rams, a lot of Cardinals. They beat the Seahawks twice. They lost to Atlanta. They lost to Denver. They lost to Chicago. I just ask, are we putting way too much stock in a team that's led by a 3rd-string quarterback that hasn't beat many? That being said, I think they beat Seattle, but maybe we're putting a little too much stock in them. That's all.
No, it just sounds like you're not a believer in Purdy, and I am. And so, to me,
No. I like the kid Purdy. He has given me no reason to doubt him other than, look, this is the playoffs now. My big question is, are we giving them too much credit, much like the people who chat and say the Eagles haven't beaten anybody? I'm just saying San Francisco's best win this year, they beat Miami.
Whose defense do you think is better, Mike? San Fran or Philly?
San Fran.
That's why everybody thinks, because they're the only ones that truly, when you say a dominant defense in 2023 NFL terms, I think the 49ers are the only team that I see.
I agree. And here's the thing. Seattle just played them a couple weeks ago. It was 21-13, tough game. Seattle's tough, man. Walker, this kid's a beast running the ball. Their line is better than it's been under the Russell Wilson era. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, the Disley guy always seems to get a catch in the end zone somewhere. Their problem is they can't stop the run a lick. They don't stop the run. They got big physical corners. It should be an interesting matchup. I just don't think they have enough. But if San Francisco gets to that next round, I think that's when the questions might have to be focused on a little more.
Yeah, and I want to put, you know, Pete Carroll has 21 playoff game experience. You can't underestimate the importance and value of that. Let me ask you about the G-Men and the Vikings. It's getting scary now because I haven't talked to one person, Mike, that has picked Minnesota here. It's like we're all just jumping the gun, and it's a foregone conclusion. And you look on the roster and you stack them up. The talent of Minnesota versus the talent of the Giants is so wide, but there's something to be said for hard work beating talent, and what Coach Dayball has brought to the overall mentality with good coaching and positivity, right? Confidence.
Yeah. This Giants team to me is the least talented team. Maybe it's in the NFC field, maybe the entire field. They run the ball well. Minnesota. Oh man, I'm not a Minnesota guy, but I think they win this game. I think they just have too many things at home with the offense. I don't think the Giants have enough to get stops. The biggest problem for me is Minnesota gives up a lot of yards in the pass game. They're second worst defense in the league, I think, statistically speaking. The Giants, their weakest spot is the pass game. I mean, they just don't have playmakers to keep those chains moving. If they can run the ball effectively, I think, you look at these two teams, -3 point differential, Minnesota -6. It seems like it's going to be a close game. It was the first time. It was a 61-yard field goal that won that game. I just feel that everyone's against Minnesota, and they get at least this one. I think they have enough offensive weapons. Justin Jefferson makes a play. The Giants like to blitz, and I think that blitz will end up costing them in the end. Jefferson gets a big play against a blitz. They score. It's a close game, but I think Minnesota wins.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can't recall the last playoff matchup featuring two rookie head coaches, which we have here. It is interesting also. Minnesota has 11 wins with a 1 point or one possession differential. Is that lucky, or is that battle tested, or is that luck?
I read a stat yesterday about that. They have the most wins one-score game in NFL history. By the way, the Giants are second this year. They have 8 one-score wins. Teams that have one-score wins, and 80% of their wins this year are one-score wins. Every single one of those teams but one was 1-and-out in the playoffs.
Wow.
That's a number for you, Rick.
That is something. That says something. All right, let me get your opinion. And as a football fan, hey, I love the fact that we have a Monday night football playoff game. How exciting is that? Now, if I was the Cowboys or the Bucks, I'd be pretty peeved that I got a short turnaround and got to go face somebody 6 days later. But hey, that's the benefit of having the 1 seed like the Philadelphia Eagles do. And if the Vikings do take care of business and the 49ers take care of business, then the Eagles are going to play the winner of the Cowboys at Bucks, which if you had asked me last week when we spoke before the Cowboys Commanders Sam Howell barn burner, I would have told you that the Cowboys are going to go to Tampa, take care of business, no problem. After that, I don't know. After the way Brady has rallied the troops the last couple weeks, I think this is a coin toss affair. I think it could, quite frankly, come down to whoever has the ball last. How does Mike Gill see it?
Terrible matchup for Dallas. Last year when they got matched up with San Francisco, first thing out of my mouth was they ain't winning that game. Too physical. San Francisco, too physical for Dallas. Dallas is pretty soft. Feel the same way here, man. And it's not as emphatic where I say they ain't winning this game. We know this. They're not as good on grass. They don't score nearly as much on grass. Their defense is not nearly as ferocious on grass. They don't get to the quarterback enough on grass. Brady don't let you sack them anyway. These two teams have a game, and Dallas got their ass whipped in that game. It wasn't competitive. That was not a fair fight. Tampa Bay kicked their ass up and down that field. Now, scored 19-13. Problem was Dallas couldn't move the ball. Game on grass. Slow field for them. I think this is a horrible matchup for Dallas. Brady never lost to Dallas. I think Brady understands that's America's team. They're the brand, and they can't beat me. I hate this matchup for Dallas. Dallas is clearly the more talented team, but they are the more weak-minded team. And weak mind don't get you by in the playoffs, baby. I think this is screaming Tampa here.
Mike, you didn't get the memo then, or you missed the Dak Prescott press conference before the Eagles game. In fact, he had to cut off the Dallas reporter and say, yo, not for nothing, not to brag about myself, but I'm mentally tough.
Yes, he is. Yes, he did. Listen, and Zeke Elliott said it the other day. I'm looking in everybody's eyes and I see a different look. The playoffs are here. So maybe they do have a different feel and a different look. I'll believe it when I see it. I've seen 13-win Dallas teams go by the wayside. This one, to me, is a more talented team than Tampa Bay, but I just don't feel good about this if I'm a Dallas fan, man. Their offensive line is a big problem in this game. Big problem in this game.
Yeah, and suddenly Brady has some healthy weapons at his disposal. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones, playoff Lenny, they're all good to go. Buckle up.
You talk about communication on the line. I think they're going to get Ryan Jensen back. They're an all-pro center. That changes the dynamic there. Their problem hasn't been defense this year, though. Their problem, they've had some games. Look, their defense isn't great. It's not Super Bowl 2020 defense, but their defense shut this Dallas team out 3 points earlier this year. They're not much different from that team. Their problem has been on the offensive line all season long. What's the problem? Why are they 8-9? Their offensive line has been dreadful. We'll see if for one game that line can do their part.
Man, it's going to make for some interesting conversation. Sounds like the Bucks could be percolating on the back burner there. We'll find out how it all shakes down. Mike, appreciate the time. What do you got cooking? 97.3 ESPN, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern today over there. What's happening?
Yeah, man. Sal Powell at 3 o'clock. Adam Kaplan at 4 for football at 4. I see someone in the chat says they enjoy football at 4, so thank you guys. Every day, 4 o'clock, we do football at 4 with the guys from Inside the Birds. So at 4 o'clock, it's kind of our version of mandatory Metallica, if you will, right? We do football every day at 4 o'clock. And then Casey Joyner from The Athletic will do one thought every playoff game, and he really breaks it down from an analytical perspective on all these matchups. And yeah, it's super wild card weekend, man. I'm ready to go. This one, I'm a huge NCAA tournament fan. Huge NCAA. Love the tournament. But this weekend and next weekend are right up there with the best.
Okay, fair enough. How are my Huskies of UConn doing, by the way?
Very good, man. That UConn team, now they had a bad loss to Marquette the other night. They lost to Providence last week, too. That's 2 losses for them in the last week. I thought for a while that UConn team may have been my number 1 team in the country. But now I'm going college hoops on. You want to do a college hoop show?
Hey, brother, Danny Hurley, the pride of Jersey City.
Yeah, by the way, his brother last night, Bobby, put the beat down on Oregon. Holy mackerel. Oregon's bad. The court's bad. The team's bad. But Arizona State, Bobby Hurley smokes Oregon last night. But Danny Hurley at UConn, that UConn team to me is Final Four potential.
I like it. I don't know what the heck Bobby Hurley's doing out west at Arizona State, but hey.
I don't know either. And it's so weird seeing him coach a team out there, and he's, it just
it's like it's like Matt Rule at Nebraska.
Yeah, it's just not a fit. It's just like he's Northeast, man. We need him in the Northeast, but hey, nicer weather out there. You going out to the Super Bowl?
I am not. I'm not a Super Bowl guy.
I'll be out there for the week. I'm not staying for the game. I'm coming home, but I'll be out there for the week for the shenanigans.
No, that's, I'm sure you'll be down there at Radio Row living the good life.
I will be. We'll be out there. We'll do our show Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then I'm leaving on a red-eye Friday night to come home.
All right. Well, hey, I always get all the Super Bowl party invitations, so I'll pass them along your way, my friend.
Let me know.
All right, there you go. Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN Radio. Always a pleasure to have him on and chop it up, talk some football. Sprinkled in a lot of little college hoops. How about that? Huh? We're versatile here on the Football Playbook. And coming up next after the commercial break, we're going to have the one, the only Coach John D. Filippo as we continue to move and groove into Power Hour number 2. Smash